Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to the business meeting of the Grosse Ile Township Board of Trustees. Folks, let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Once again, welcome everyone. We'll call the meeting to order at, let's make it, 54? The entire board is present. We can conduct business as appropriate. And let's start with additions or deletions to tonight's agenda.
Mr. Supervisor.
Sure, we can start. Go ahead,
Where do you want to start?
We can start with you.
Okay.
You volunteered.
All right. Well, I'd like to add a motion for the board to authorize to authorize the labor attorney to act upon the actions outlined in the April 6, 2018 written legal opinion, and further to authorize the township manager to take such actions as he deems necessary to effectuate the recommendations.
Okay, moved by Trustee Buddy, second by Treasurer Van Oss. Just any discussion? Those in favor of adding it to tonight's agenda as action item, pardon.
She wanted a number.
It will be action item 5. Those in favor of adding this recommendation as action item 5, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None offered. That will be added to tonight's agenda. Let's see. Removing. Ms. O'Connor?
So I'd like to make a motion to remove action item number 3, accept employee retirement from tonight's agenda.
Support.
We'll give that one to the treasurer because he's closer. But moved by Clerk O'Connor, seconded by Treasurer Van Oss to remove the acceptance of employee retirement. Discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, action item number 3 will be removed. And let's see. Mr. Nelson.
I would like to make a motion to remove action item 4 based on discussions with the board.
Support.
Okay, moved by Trustee Nelson, seconded by Trustee Budney. I think this has been discussed at length among the board. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None offered. Any other additions or deletions to tonight's agenda?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor. I have one other item. I would like to make a motion to split action item number 2. There's really 2 issues involved there. One, the making of the DPS director appointment, and the other is the salary to go along with it. I don't want anybody, that's my motion, to split those into 2 separate issues.
Support.
Okay, moved by Trustee Budney, seconded by Trustee Malvesto. There will be discussion among the board.
Yes.
And my only
Mr.
comment,
Treasurer.
it is a joint motion. There are 2 steps to that motion. One is salary, and the other one is assigning somebody to that position of director. And I think they both should go hand in hand.
Well, the reason I made the motion is some of us believe that it is 2 issues, and you'd be forcing us to may possibly vote against one part of that, voting, say, for instance, vote against the appointment of the individual because we disagree with the salary, or vice versa. And it just seems like it'd be better if we did it by 2. That's why I made the motion.
Okay, we have a motion, support, other discussion among the board. I think we're going to be going roll call on this again. Trustee Malvesto.
Support.
Support the splitting and adding a second, it would be a second action item then.
Correct.
Okay, and Trustee Budney.
Support.
Treasurer Van Oss.
No.
Supervisor, no. Madam Clerk.
No.
Trustee Nelson.
No.
Trustee Bletcher.
Support.
We have a 4-3 vote, so it will stay as originally published. Other additions or deletions to tonight's agenda? None offered. Those in favor of approving the agenda as amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None offered. The agenda stands as amended. With this time, we'll open up to public comment on what's left of tonight's agenda items. I'm sorry, Mrs. Walker.
Kathy Walker, Thorpe Court. The only thing I'm going to ask is, was the position, the director's position, ever posted? I know it's been open for 4 years, and I have no dog in the hunt. I have nothing against the person who's going to get the job. I just think, was it posted? And if not, why wasn't it posted? Just because then you can say unequivocally, we have looked high and low. That's all my question.
It was never posted. Was Mr. Manager? No, it was never posted.
Is there any reason you don't post?
The board never asked for it. Neither the commission nor the board asked for it to be posted.
And that's not part of the daily...
Doesn't have to be. If the commission recommended it, would bring it to the board would post it. If the board wanted it, the board could take an action and have it posted. It was never.
But it was not posted.
It was never posted.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Other comments? Mr. Heil.
Brian, I'm not sure that anything I say will take you by surprise.
Introduce yourself, please, Mr. Heil.
Bill Heil.
Yeah.
I live on East River Road. My main concern with what has gone on last year and this year is that I still, even though other people have talked to the contrary, believe that we are assuming the potential long-term for financial burdens that we may not be able to afford. I don't see our tax base, the real revenues, growing at a speed that will keep up with the obligations we are undertaking. And if that's the case, I'm not talking about whether somebody is worthy, whether they have worked hard, whether they have done whatever. The question is, what can we afford? And that affordability relates not only to the salaries that we pay, but how much money we have left over for the other things we need to do to maintain the functioning of this community for its citizens. You've heard me talk about that stuff before. You don't need to hear it again. Roads, pipes, whatever. I would like to see perhaps a consideration of splitting the issue, maybe reducing the payment and increasing it over time as we saw a better look at affordability. It's not an attempt to punish anyone or to discriminate. But we have a lot of unknowns that we're facing in the future. And those unknowns are related to heavy sums of money, multiples of millions. And I don't think that it's responsible to be giving these wage increases in that headwind, because these people will depend on that later on when they're retired. And if it's not there, that isn't right either. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heil. Any other comment? Mr. Pilkington.
Just a question. Craig Pilkington, South Point. I feel the same way that Bill does. I have no problem, certainly, with the individual that for whom this increase is being considered. But has anybody projected what the long-term aggregate obligations that we're going to add to the township as far as pension funds and pension obligations are concerned with this increase?
Normally, this is not question and answer, but the range that could involve, it's just so broad, I don't think we could give a reasonable answer. I don't know how long she's going to live. I don't know how long she's going to work. And those are all...
Well, but I mean, you could presume a number of years of service?
Again, it's a broad range, and I'm not going to assume. I'm not going to enter with an assumption.
Okay, so the answer is no?
No.
That you guys have not looked and modeled this obligation, is that right? Okay. Well, I've got to peg that over $500,000, but could be wrong.
Based on the $83,250, I think that's the number that is in the packet tonight. I don't think the last 4 years that we replaced Mrs. Beneteau, who was making, correct me if I'm wrong, $51,000 a year. Is that correct?
That's
we
correct.
Didn't replace that person. So if you want to, just multiply 51 times 4. Then going forward, every year we don't replace that position, there's another $51,000. Just in dollars that we save, that doesn't take into consideration fringe benefits we might have to pay a person if we replaced her old job. Does that make any sense?
No.
It should, because we've got two people doing what had been done by...
No.
We have 2.5 jobs.
The other way to look at it, Jim, is maybe we didn't need that second person to begin with.
That's
All right,
possible.
this is, again, it's on the agenda, and we'll vote on it.
Okay.
So, with that, any other public comment? Can't see everyone. Okay, with none offered, we'll move on to tonight's consent agenda. Mr. Treasurer.
Looking for a motion to approve consent agenda. Excuse me. Where is it? 18-009. That includes the minutes of the March 26, 2018 regular meeting, check registers dated through April 6, 2018, and approval of the Grosse Ile Yacht Club fireworks permit for June 30, 2018, rain delay of July 1st.
Support.
Okay, moved by Treasurer Van Oss, seconded by Trustee Budney to approve consent agenda 18-009. Any discussion among the board? If none offered, those in favor of approving the consent agenda as read, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None offered. That stands approved. With that, we'll move into tonight's action items. Mr. Treasurer.
Look for approval on action item number 1, is just to approve the application for waiver and plan of defined benefit pension retirement system.
Support.
Okay, moved by Treasurer Van Oss, seconded by Trustee Budney, the waiver that the state said we needed to file.
Basically, Ann, do you want to kind of address this issue, because it's pretty much yours anyway?
Right. I think we should just read the, I'll just read the history and explanation, and that's where we're at this point in time. The Michigan Department of Treasury is requiring that this application for waiver and plan be filed by any local unit of government with at least one defined benefit pension retirement system that has triggered a preliminary review of unfunded status. In accordance with the Public Act 202 of 2017, if the state treasurer determines that the unfunded status is actually being addressed by the local unit of government, the state treasurer shall issue a waiver of determination of unfunded status. So basically what has happened is we filed that first report that said we have a red flag that we were under 60% funded in our pension plan, and this is what we're responding to. So I'm basically saying our annual actuary evaluation report dated December 31st, 2016 actually showed our funded ratio is 61%. But due to the reporting requirement of GASB 68, our audit report shows our funded ratio of 58.1%, causing the township to fall below the triggered threshold of 60% as defined in Public Act 202 of 2017. So basically what we're doing with this report is filing our actuary that says by the year, based on the changes that we've done, and what we've done, that our actuary, our 60% funded, will be funded by 2021 and thereafter. So that's what this report is giving to the state. And then the state will evaluate and see if we are granted the waiver or if there needs further action.
Okay, this is the most convoluted bit of legislation, and I've talked to two of our state reps on this already, and neither of them has really any grasp on what they voted on. The short version, the whole unfunded thing, as Ann and I have been peeling this back and peeling it back in, was it 1991? Just stew on this for a minute. In 1991, we were 101% funded. In 1992, we were 81% funded. Never missed a payment. We have no idea, and we can't understand why that changed that dramatically. And then it went down, 58. It's been hovering 60-ish ever since. And there's so many moving pieces to this. I mean, as of today, we might be better funded. We might be less funded. It's only a snapshot at a moment in time, but we have increased our contributions. We're contributing a lot more than we're withdrawing. When we ran our numbers, again, based on a moment in time, we were at 61%. The audit report had us at 58%. I don't know what numbers Yo and Yo put in, how they computed it. We will be continuing to talk with MERS on this, but we are increasing our contributions. And again, another GASB report might come out and change the whole thing again. We've had this discussion on GASB focused on public or private pensions that can go out of business, that can kick people into the PBGC, versus public pensions, which this community, we're going to be here. You know, we're not going to cease operations. We're not going to shut down and throw our employees out in the street and stop making retirement payments. So,
And another thing is, I went back in history, we were paying more. We were trying to get 100% level of funding. We paid them an extra $1.2 million over a period of time. And in that time period, because their assumptions changed, our actual funded percentage went down. So it's very confusing sitting on our side, trying to do the best that we can and do what we can when financial gave us that ability to do that. Obviously, with financial constraints, we weren't doing it as much. But it's frustrating on our side to see those funded percentages all over the place for no apparent reason when you're doing it in the right direction and you're doing things to change it in the right direction. So that's the frustration, and obviously they're going to either issue us a waiver or they're going to come in and say we need to do more, and that's where we're at. That's what this is the first step of the procedures.
they're going to have trouble not accepting our waiver. I think we're a very financially responsible community. When we see the numbers every day, we're not just waking up and all of a sudden acting surprised. Now, again, another GASB report could come out and skew it one way or the other, totally out of our control, totally devoid of any financial reality. Or maybe it is financial. We don't know. We're making our payments. We're upping our payments. We're going to look after our pension obligations.
Yeah, I do believe that we will get the waiver,
Right,
simply because we have met all of our obligations, and all of a sudden, just by their wave of a wand, is where we end up under. It's nothing that we did. Plus, it's being a new law, and them not even knowing what's going on. I mean, we'll see what happens, but I believe we're gonna get the waiver.
I think it was a way of getting everyone's actuarial report, because with this waiver, you're filing your actuarial report with the state of Michigan.
And
I just
truly,
think it was a simple way of getting.
And what do they really want to go after? I would think they'd really want to go after the people who aren't making their payments, who are falling behind or not making anything. That's who you want to go after, not somebody that's making 100% of their payments.
That's pretty good assessment, Mr. Budney. It's, again, a lot of this, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of this out of our control. What we can control, we are controlling. We're moving in the right direction. The board needs to approve the waiver. Ms. Starznak will send it up. We'll see what happens. Other comments among the board? All right, with none offered, those in favor of approving the attached application for waiver and plan for the defined benefit pension retirement system. Those in favor of forwarding the application for waiver, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None offered. Thank you. We'll see where this leads. I will introduce the next motion. Is to appoint Lorinda Beneteau as a full-time, at-will Department of Public Services Director at an annual salary of $83,250.
Support.
Okay, moved by the supervisor, seconded by Treasurer Van Oss. Background: February of 2014, Lorinda Beneteau was appointed interim DPS manager and has continued responsibility as DPS administrative manager. In November 2016, the employee has earned the State of Michigan Water Operator License S1, performed exceptionally for the past 4 years, while also continuing responsibilities as a DPS administrative manager, as well as managing all aspects of community development and building. Once the S1 license was obtained, the township manager focused discussion among the township board and the DPS chair regarding formal appointment of Lorinda Beneteau as DPS director. The recently adopted budget is reflective of the promotion of the interim DPS director to the full DPS director position. This item has been placed before the township board as a separate item on the April 9, 2018 meeting for consideration at the direction of the supervisor and the manager. As the township manager, Mr. Riem recommends the appointment of Lorinda Beneteau as the DPS director at an annual salary $83,250. Salary recommendation is based upon the following: The market average for this position is $87,721. The employee has been performing the job for over 4 years. The employee has earned the State of Michigan Water Operator License S1. The employee has been performing the work of 2.5 positions for the past 4 years: DPS Director, Community Development Director, and DPS Administrative Manager. Since the previous DPS Director has passed, the employee salary savings to the DPS was a total of $271,242. The DPS maintenance lead with overtime has averaged nearly $87,000 a year in the past 3 years. For approximately the past month, I understand, Mr. Riem understands, there's been conversation at the board level that the salary is too high. I believe my recommendation is accurate, since the previous employee, as of today, would have reached a salary level of $83,929 plus continuing the $7,200 car allowance. The proposed salary is below the pay scale report of $87,721 and is also below many of the compensation influencers identified in the pay scale report. It's attached for the board members. This action will allow the township to retain an extremely knowledgeable employee so we can remain lean, i.e. doing more with less. Retention also results in cost savings, but not having to train new employees. As a reminder, a past adjustment has occurred on a larger scale for the fire marshal position. The current interim DPS director salary is $68,000. The proposed increase is $15,250 annually. Now, my comments. As supervisor, the board is concerned with both future costs and whether this proposed salary is justifiable. My recommendation is based on precedent and research. For Mr. Sedlock still with us, his salary would be as mentioned, $83,929 plus $7,200 car allowance. Research indicates the recommended salary is below the pay scale report average of $87,721. It's below many of the compensation influencers identified in the pay scale report. As we have seen in the past, investments to retain proven performers among our staff have returned significant total savings while enabling continuity of the services our residents expect. With the reality that, as a municipal corporation, we must be able to attract and retain the best candidates for our staff, I'm convinced recommended salary, $83,250, is fair to all. Comments among the board? I think you've already made your comment, but Mr. Malvesto.
Could you please refresh my memory as to when the question of whether you posted this job or not was brought before the board and discussed and then decided not? Because it sounds like you and Mr. Riem made this decision. I don't remember that discussion taking place.
At no point did the DPS commission never brought the consideration of the board. We let Mrs. Beneteau continue as the acting DPS director, the interim DPS director.
But there was a statement made that the decision was made not to post the job. The board made the decision not to post the job. I don't remember that discussion.
I don't think that was the intent was nobody brought the decision.
I'm sure what the intent was. I'm just saying you made the statement that it was a decision of the board, and I don't remember that discussion, that discussion taking place.
No, I don't believe I made that comment.
We can replay the tape.
Well, we'll do that tomorrow.
Okay.
But, okay, regardless, the fact that
And what is the justification for a car allowance?
There isn't any.
That was part of Mr. Sedlock's compensation
package. That was Mr.
package.
Sedlock's. That is not the current
Mrs.
position.
Beneteau is not getting a car allowance.
Correct.
You just said it.
No, he said that's what Mr. Sedlock got. He didn't say this. It was part of this.
And my mistake, because it sounded like you said it was part of the
No,
package.
it's part of what was saved.
Additional comments? Mr. Treasurer.
Are you going?
Go ahead.
We've had this conversation a number of times, and when the previous spot was filled with Mr. Sedlock, I was on that board that hired Mr. Sedlock in position. We had a conversation at that time with our township engineers in his company to see if in fact we should perhaps subcontract that particular position with the engineering group. The engineering group came back and did some numbers on it at that time and felt that, number one, because of the size of the budget and because of the requirement that it would require him to staff full-time, that it would be in the best interest of the township and the township residents to hire a DPS director, at which time we proceeded to bring Barry Sedlock on. Barry Sedlock worked very diligently and brought the level of our operation for the DPS department to a level that was, bar none, one of the best in the area. Unfortunately, Barry passed, and the DPS director at the time contacted me, and at the time I was liaison to that commission, and requesting that Lorenda be, Lorenda be placed in a position of deputy director, that she had met all the requirements except for one of the water certifications, which we would direct her to get. At that time, I fully agreed with him. She had all the experience, she had all the background, and had worked hand in hand with Barry for a number of years. So it just made sense that she would be the next to take step in line. She did that. She got the water certifications that she needed. She got her continual training that she needed, and continued to operate the head of the building department as well as the DPS department. And I think that she's done everything that we have asked. We need a director. If I had my way about it, she would be, because of the job she's doing and the budget she's continuing, I think she should be right at the going rate. But I acquiesced to the DPS chair, and we've come to an agreement that this is the amount of $83,000 and change was what Barry would be making at that time had he remained. And she has done the job that he's done. She's operating that budget, and I believe that fund is, that balance or that amount is correct. And I would fully support and request that the board fully support moving her into that position at that rate.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Other comments? Mr. Bletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. The issue to me is, what do we do with the position and the entire department if we do not approve removing, and I very much dislike it's take it or leave it, but if we do not move forward to name this 4.5-year acting director as the director, what have we been doing for the last 4 years? I don't think that we can say that the job has not been done. I wish that we could vote on this separately so that we would have a number lower than the 83,000. But if we don't approve this person for a full-time job that she has been doing for the last 4 years and 2 months, then what are we going to be gaining? We're going to be going out and bringing in someone else, if the numbers are correct that you have, at the same salary. We will not have a person who has the institutional knowledge that she does for the decades that she's been in the department. We may very well end up paying more. And what do we do with her? We don't make her the full-time and recognize her as the department head. What are we going to do with her?
You want me to answer that?
Not right now. Okay. Give me a second. But I have a problem with that. She is a known commodity. One of the most difficult decisions we make in a township or as any kind of employer is making sure you have the right person for the right job. Now, I have not heard anybody complain that she hasn't done the job for the last 4+ years, that she doesn't have the institutional knowledge, that she's made some terrible decisions that have got us involved in litigation, or that she hasn't been doing the work in a perfectly acceptable, and as I understand it, even an outstanding manner from what Mr. Kostick has advised me. So what I'm looking at this is, what do we do with the 4 years of experience we have where she has proven her ability? What do we do if we have to go outside with that position? She has proven that she can do the job. I would like to see it at a lower rate. I think 83 is high. But at the end of the day, I'm forced with the decision of either I take her at $83,000 or I kick this person to the curb and look for somebody who's going to cost more and won't have the institutional knowledge or the experience or, frankly, the ability to do the work that she has proven that she can do. So therefore, I'm going to make it very clear. I support the appointment, and I'm left with no choice but to accept it with the salary. I do wish it were lower, but I respect the work that's been done. Mr. Budney, you had a question.
No, I had no question. You asked what would we do with her. Well, when this whole thing was set up, it was interim. So she would merely go back to her old job. That's the answer to your question. Which is exactly what we were thinking of when we made her interim. There was no guarantee that she necessarily, although a lot of us thought she would grow into the job, and I agree. I don't think anybody here thinks that the appointment shouldn't be made. The real question is the amount of money.
That's off the table. That's off the table now.
What is?
The amount.
It is?
It's remember, we're going
to vote one way or another.
Oh, yeah, agreed. So
okay.
Separating the issue is off the table.
Well, but we'll talk about the issue. The issue is with the dollar amount. I find the amount very troubling because, as is quite frankly normal, we get a very superficial justification. We had 10 cities or 10 communities shown to us. 11. 7 of the communities were cities. Cities own their roads. Cities have to take care of their roads. Thus, that DPS director in those cities it's going to be a different job. It's not comparing apples to apples. One of the cities, Southgate, their DPS director gets $72,000. All that tells me is that we need more information than simply taking a name of a city, a title, and a dollar amount, adding them up, dividing by 11, and coming out with an average. I have a problem with that. I share, and this is where we disagree on the board, I too share with what's down the road. This is being talked about and looked at as if it's just today, it's just this year, it's just this budget. No, we're putting this into every budget from here on out. We're also dealing with the pension and other benefits that we don't know what the ramifications are. I would certainly be, as a compromise, I would certainly be in favor of something like $75,000 with increases over the next couple of years. But going right to the top makes no sense to me. Simply because I don't believe Grozeal can afford it. And if you'll notice in the reading of the history and everything, not once was it mentioned, what can Grozeal afford? And that's what the answer that's a question that we have out there every time we make these big payments that we don't want to get the answer to. So we ignore it. And I don't know how much longer. I certainly think we can do this, and we're not going to be affected by this. This board isn't going to be affected by it. We'll make it through the next 3 years. But down the line, I think we're setting the residents of Grozeal, who are paying the freight, up for a big, big surprise. And I don't know why we have to do this. As I said in the last meeting and on the other one, give us some time. Let us look into this, and let's look at and have an educated assessment. For some reason, the majority of the board doesn't want to do that, and I don't understand why. I am all for Lorinda getting this. I am not for the dollar amount.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Budd. Any other comments from the board? Okay, none offered. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. O'Connor?
It's okay.
Ms. O'Connor, I'm sorry.
Just wanted to add fuel to the fire. No, I'm I appreciate everything that Mr. Budney did say. I believe we have taken the time. I believe we have done the research. I am impressed by what Mr. Bletcher has said. I, too, am a firm advocate for a department head who has long institutional history and knowledge, being one such public official myself, knowing the ins and outs of the department. I know from conversations within the township that Mrs. Beneteau has earned the respect of her department, of her coworkers. She has earned the respect, certainly, of me and members of the community that I know that have had to work with her. I also know that she commands quite a bit of respect from the people in the county that she has to work with on a regular basis, and our township engineers. They all respect her head for numbers, her head for facts, her being a straight shooter. I think the DPS has gone forward with this recommendation because they also saw these things. I believe that we would be gambling, to put it mildly, to throw this experience aside in the hopes that we might find a better candidate somewhere out there, because everyone always says, well, you just never know. Well, that's the easiest thing in the world to say. You just never know. We do know we've got a very efficient, professional, and effective person in line for this position. It was poo-pooed when Trustee Nelson talked about the position right now being a twofer, but it is a twofer. We have a community director, community development director, and we have a DPS director rolled into one position. If you were to hire a new DPS director, we were informed as a board that it's very unlikely to find someone who would also be qualified and or willing to act as a community development director. And we even heard Trustee Budney say, well, Mrs. Beneteau would go back to just being community development director.
No. Get her administrative manager is her title. But bottom line, now we're talking again 2 people instead of the one that we have that is doing both jobs very well. So those are some of the reasons why I support not only promoting Mrs. Beneteau to this position that she has earned, but also giving along with it the salary that we have decided as a township another director has earned and would earn. And so I think it would also be disingenuous for us to say that in this particular case, we don't think the salary is justified. And I have to be honest with the audience and with the people on the board. We never had any of these kind of discussions when the salaries of, say, the fire chief or the police chief came up for board discussion. And everyone just assumes, well, you know, those are important positions, they're dangerous positions. Well, DPS director, it's probably the biggest budget, is it not? The biggest budget that the township has. And that's a hell of a lot of responsibility. And that deserves what I believe we can afford, or it would not have been brought forward by our finance director. Mr. Supervisor, I have a question. When we put this together, the interim, we gave the administrative manager an additive to be the interim director. We also gave an additive to the lead maintenance to work the field. When Barry was here, we didn't have the lead maintenance making that additive. In the budget, which it wasn't mentioned, but in the budget, that individual is still making his additive. So my question is, if this is passed today, does he go back to his original position since the interim is over?
That's not part of this.
The question.
I can't answer that.
Well, okay. No, the DPS didn't decide to give them that. The board did. The board.
It's a union position. It's going to be a topic.
It was a side. It was not a. It was a side agreement. It was
Okay.
not part of the union.
All right, but that's not part of this motion. But
Well-
it's something we will address. Though,
Well,
Mr. Buddy.
it's something the board should understand, that if in fact he's not, then we're actually paying 90-some thousand for this position, not 83.
I'm not going to challenge your math, but I am going to move on and vote on this. Any other comments? All right, with none offered, going to go roll call again, and where to start? Mr. Bletcher, I'll go the other direction.
I support the appointment.
Mr. Nelson. Madam Clerk.
I support the appointment.
Supervisor, aye. Mr. Treasurer.
I support.
Mr. Budney.
Nay.
Mr. Malvesto.
Opposed.
Motion carries. But okay, moving on. Where are we?
Yeah. Answers a lot of questions.
With action items 3 and 4 off the agenda, Mr. Budney.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize the township labor attorney to act upon the actions outlined in the April 6, 2018 written legal opinion, and further to authorize the township manager to take such action as he deems necessary to effectuate the recommendations.
Okay, moved by Trustee Budney, seconded by Treasurer Van Oss. Most of this was discussed in closed session, so I don't see there going to be much discussion. It's a way forward with a continuing problem. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None offered. That motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Budney. Concludes tonight's action items. Clerk's report. Madam Clerk.
You've left the clerk speechless. Literally, I don't have a speech. All I know is we are buying some new laptops for the poll books in the election. Already done, but just paid for. Okay. Microphone.
It was a budgeted.
Yeah.
It was a budgeted
I
expenditure.
won't have many more opportunities of putting you on the spot, my dear. So, okay. So it was a budgeted item, but we're keeping our technology upgraded. A couple of things that we are working with the state on, in particular, and the county. We've been in communications with both the county and the state, is election security, because I know it's been in the headlines in both the major press and in the internet chat rooms. And again, I encourage residents to get involved with working our election, volunteering to work as a poll inspector. We do pay for that privilege, but we feel very secure here in the state of Michigan that we have a system that is, they won't say tamper-proof, but you have a paper trail that shows every action that has been made that can be recreated. And so there is a high level of security about the way that the state has not only allocated its electronic equipment, but also its training and its traditional methods for tabulating ballots and keeping ballots. We don't really have anything to add, do we? Than that. I just wanted to assure people, because it's come up in the Kroger aisles as the articles have been out on the internet. So I wanted to just let everybody know.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Treasurer.
Thank you, Supervisor. For the month of February, gross seal had a total of $23,603,587 in various accounts, and those accounts are all reviewable on my website. The accounts generated a total of $15,473, which is 0.96%, which is one hell of an improvement. I mean, things are really looking much, much better. The gross seal property tax bills that were unpaid as of March 1st will now be collected by Wayne County. Wayne County will send out delinquent tax letters in early June to property owners who have not paid their 2017 property taxes and making a payment request. If you have any questions as to what your steps are, if you haven't made those payments, please do not hesitate to call Annette in my office. She'll guide you through the steps and help you in any way that she can. Unpaid 2017 personal property taxes will be collected by my office. Statements will be mailed out this week to request local businesses that are delinquent in personal property tax payments to make those payments, and that also includes the 189 properties that have actually a property tax involved in it. I believe we have a Commerce Park meeting on the 16th. Is that correct, Mike? Just a little information. You've probably heard some comments that the EPA is moving off the island, and that is correct. They're going to be vacating their building. We don't know what's going to happen to that building yet. If it goes through the general process, the GSA will get that building. There's a whole chain of who gets it and who's next in line to get it. Eventually, it'll drift down to us. We're not really sure we even want it. We would have to do some cost analysis and some evaluation as to whether the township would benefit by taking over that building if it got down to this level. The other thing I would like to comment on is that I'm a Rotary member. My Rotary Club is currently looking for nominations for Citizen of the Year. This is a Service Above Self award for an island resident. So if you know of anyone that needs special recognition, because generally the people that qualify for this are always under the radar. They don't want their knowledge and exceptions, but it's very important that they do get recognized. There'll be the Grand Marshal at our Island Fest Parade this year. There'll be a dinner in their honor. There's a number of things that go with it, as well as a donation to the Paul Harris Foundation in their name. So it's a great honor. We've had recipients since 1961. This has been going on a long time, and all the people that have really made Grosse Ile a wonderful place to live have been considered or nominated for that position. So if you have somebody you want to nominate, please go to GrosseIleRotary.org, and the application form is there. Fill that application form out. Turn it in. We have to have it by the 30th of this month, and we'll have a review committee that goes over it, and we'll select the Citizen of the Year this year. It's an honor, and if you know somebody that you really think should be nominated, please get that information to us, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. We'll move on to trustee liaison reports, and Mr. Bletcher, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I have the pleasure of serving on two commissions. The first, Open Space Greenways. We have had a face-to-face meeting with representatives that are active sellers interested in selling a parcel of property. Did have a meeting last week, and that went very well. We're waiting to take it to the next step where we exchange and receive proposals. The second thing is that there is currently in place an inventory of properties to check on the deadfall, trespasses from adjoining owners, as well as trail conditions by a walkthrough. That's going to be taking place in April and early May as weather permits. Some of the trails right now are significant amounts of water that make it very difficult to traverse. We also have been unable to move forward as of this date with access from Ferry Road to the open space between Island Boulevard and Ferry Road. Our chairperson has continued to make contact, but we haven't had a response yet that allows us to report progress on that. Regarding police, we have had several things that are very, very unusual and noteworthy. Number one, our Sergeant Pelland, who many of you may know as our DARE officer, recently received another life-saving award as part of his Downriver Mutual Aid Crisis Negotiation Team. It was a pleasure to present Mr. Pellin with another life-saving award. His family was present at our last commission meeting. Mr. Pellin was involved directly in the negotiations of a situation involving someone who was a likely suicide. Ken spent a long time talking them down, getting them to treatment, and being able to move forward with all of the issues and problems that they unfortunately were facing. Mr. Pellin and the department have had a number of life-saving awards, but this is the first one that has been a result of his crisis negotiation team experience. We also removed A.J. Benson off of probation. He was a former reserve. He is an officer that has done a terrific job as a reserve, and he's doing a very good job now. All of the reports on AJ just show that he's doing a very, very good job. He's familiar with the island. We were very fortunate to obtain him. He had passed up opportunity with other departments to stay with Grozeal. And when the opening came, he jumped on it, and he was a consensus opinion for the entire commission. He does a great job. If you get a chance to see AJ, hopefully not professionally, just say hello to him. He's the youngest-looking police officer you're ever going to see. Also, Commissioner Zalasko is finished. Is putting the finishing touches on his 5-year plan projections for the police department. We anticipate that being out in the month of April. Last month, our officers drove 14,300 miles. They responded to 24 alarms, 36 rescues, 69 911 calls, for a total call allotment of 921 for the month. So we are out there. We are involved in the community, attempting to make it and continue to make it the safest community in Michigan, and certainly one of the safest in the nation. So that you think that we do more than write tickets, last month a total of 181 verbal warnings were issued. So our officers are pulling people over, asking them to slow down, drive better, and make it a safe community. And that that ends my reports.
Thank you, Mr. Bletcher. Mr. Budney.
I don't have a whole lot. We have a DPS meeting tomorrow, 7 o'clock in this room. And then I'll try not to jinx this, but maybe we're going to have a meeting, a ZBA meeting at the 2 weeks from tomorrow, again in this room. That's it.
DPS meeting, roads?
DPS will be roads and televising of our sewer system.
Exciting stuff.
Exciting.
Roads may be a little more exciting than... Pardon? Are we going to have an open... Is there an open house?
We have nothing scheduled right now. There's going to be... We will be getting... there will be a forum to talk to the people on West River for our West River water main. That might be what you're thinking about. Yeah.
Okay.
And and all the people had gotten a letter notifying them of that.
All the good news on West River, but we're getting it repaved, and we're getting
both lanes.
I think it's great news, and $388,000 from the county.
Actually, 857.
No, I'm talking about the second one. We've gotten two.
You're talking about to back up we had gotten the two $500,000 ones. This one is 383. Yep.
You will see repairs to roads, and we're working hard at this. We're much better relationship with the county. You will see road repairs.
And this money will be used again for the interior roads, for the residential roads. It's not for the main roads. It's to fix, which we get no money for ever, for the residential roads.
So there will be some minor inconveniences. We will be working on roads. Thank you, Mr. Buddy. Mr. Modesto.
I have nothing to offer.
Mr. Nelson.
I'd like to bring up Mrs. O'Farrell for a rec report update.
Good evening, residents and Township Board. Just a couple announcements. The next Festival Commission meeting is April 18th at 7 p.m. The next CRC meeting with our full commission will be April 26th at 7 p.m. A couple announcements from the Festival Commission. We are in need of volunteers. We are very, very down from where we were last year, according to Mr. Novak, who is the chairman. We are reaching out. I'm being as humble as I can be to say we need help. We have a lot of parking. We had some parking issues last year, and we're working with both chiefs to get that corrected, and we are looking for volunteers for that. So if you are interested in helping us, we can't do this event without sponsorships and without volunteers. Please go to islandfest.com, and there is a volunteer sign-up sheet. So I'm just kind of reaching out there. We definitely need that help, because without it, the festival will struggle. It will force more issues with our police and fire, which we do not want to see happen. The volunteers make this event work. It keeps it safe. And if those that have attended, you know what it takes. It takes that commission. It takes the support of the rec department as well, and the township. So I'm just asking everybody to please take a look at that. Yes.
And they get a really cool T-shirt.
They do. You get a cool shirt. So, and we changed the color. I don't think it's hot pink. Yeah, I don't know what it is. So just take a look at that. So a couple of things coming down the pipeline in the recreation department. Profile Grow Seal, we are in that final proof. That is the magazine that we are working on, which will replace our Channels magazine. We have a first draft, and again, we go through 2 to 3 drafts before that gets to the household. So we've had a couple calls from residents, and residents, I urge you to call if you are wanting to know what's going on this summer. I am in the office every day. Annette is there. I had a resident call about, a 5-year-old soccer class because it's not in there yet. The spring and summer is not out. So we have the draft at Water's Edge. Please call us, email me. I will guide you with what's going on this summer. We are having the full summer camp starting the week of June 18th, and that will be at the farm. Paperwork, I'm doing a lot of paperwork for that. So just call or email. I can get you the answers. Lots of calls. When's the golf course opening? Well, we had snow today, so I'm not sure how that's going to affect. But we are looking to have a soft open April 16th. Obviously, you can walk the course. Our carts are not coming in until sometime the week of April 23rd. So we are scheduled to open full force on Friday, April 27th from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And I think, last thing, boater safety class. We are offering that. We've had a lot of calls on that as well. This is a free class, ages 12 and up. The dates are May 7th and May 14th. 6:30 to 9 p.m., and you can register online at growsealrecreation.com. I believe this class was offered a couple of years ago, and I definitely wanted to bring it back. So we have the safety of, all of our youth. And again, they've limited it to 12 and up for the certification. I think there were some questions. Can my 10-year-old come? Obviously, yes. Your younger person can attend. More knowledge, the better. But the certification is for 12 years and older. And then we also had some questions about Sunrise Park, and I spoke about that at the last meeting. Again, a big thank you to the Nature and Land Conservancy. That retaining wall, there's no funds coming out of the township budget, and there's no funds coming out of the recreation budget. That was a donation to the Nature and Land Conservancy. So I just wanted to clear that up. There were some questions about that wall, and that was a straight donation. Nothing from either budget is going into that. So, but again, big thank you to that donor and for Peter Kantz for working through that project. It's beautiful. If you would like updates, follow me on Facebook. I do live updates, so if you can't, go out to Sunrise Park, I try to at least do some filming and keep the residents updated with what's going on. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farrell.
Kim, just saying, can you also put some of those things on the website, the township website, for people who aren't on Facebook anymore?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm starting to, get some of the new programs for spring and summer. I'm going to be loading that onto the app as well. So we'll get that updated for sure. Mm-hmm.
Thanks again. Township Attorney, Mr. Sorty.
Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to join you at the next meeting. I'll be at the Michigan Township Association annual conference. The attorneys portion of that starts first thing Monday morning. So I would certainly, and there's still, it goes on for the entire week that week, and encourage any of you to attend, even if it's for one day, and the stuff that's there. Or if anybody gets online and has any questions about any of the conferences that are there, I'll be sure to stop and pick up the materials for you. So it's an excellent conference every year, has all kinds of great information available for townships with that. So we will have one ordinance that I will be presenting to the township on minors in possession up for the next board meeting. So if you get that, I'll try to get it out in advance. If you get any questions, you can give me a call. It's pretty straightforward. The state law has changed, and we're gonna modify our ordinance to match the state law.
Thank you, Mr. Sorty. Mr. Riem.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. A few brief items I'd like to report to the board and the community this evening. We talked about website and Girls Who Connect. We're still over 5,500 subscribers to Girls Who Connect. So please remember to tell a friend, and so on. 5,500 subscribers to our Girls Who Connect app. The app company can't believe our retention basis that we have, and when we do push notifications for a bridge notification, a water main break, the trends show that the numbers actually go up, because people will then tell someone who says, hey, this is a great benefit. So I just wanted to share that information. Along the way of bridges, last month it was our understanding, and I'll let Supervisor Loft to speak about some specifics, that we're expecting the Grosvenor Parkway Bridge report any time. We are not anticipating that to close on the third Thursday like they've done in the past. We did post it on our website that way, but pay attention to your app, and we'll be receiving confirmation and letting everyone know. But we expect that report anytime. On the West River Road open house that's being held tomorrow at DPS, I want to remind everyone that West River Road from Grosvenor Parkway to Church Road will be done. They expect to start in May, actually. So the open house is an opportunity for all the residents to see the plans and discuss them with the engineering staff that'll be available to do some questions and answers. Saturday, April 21st is the Kiwanis Island-wide cleanup, and that starts at 9 a.m. at Centennial Farm. And the last item, I want to just let everyone know that there's been some information and activity moving at the McLeod site that Supervisor Loss attended a meeting at while I was out last week. So if you could talk about that, please, that'd be great. So other than that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Riem. Okay, so we dropped the ball in my court. Mr. Duker and I did spend, what were we there, about 2 hours Friday morning with Brian Kelly from the EPA, briefing us on the status of the land purchase by Crown Enterprises of the former McLeod DSC site, the status of the Riverview Trenton Railroad site in the city of Riverview. Riverview was represented. Jim Wagner was there to represent Trenton. It's a very, very complicated process. It just looks like, signing the dotted. Oh, there's a lot of dotted lines. Mike, would it be fair to say we're fairly guardedly optimistic that this will come to fruition, and that it looks like it's going to go through. I can't give you 100% certainty because there's a lot of lawyers involved. But we do think it'll go on as scheduled, and those buildings will start coming down. What happens after that will be well into the future, but all the buildings are supposed to be down within 24 months once the thing is signed. We're hoping that still happens because it's going to dramatically improve. Well, we'll get West River Road repaved and the view improved. You know, it's should have bought more lots there.
Brian, tearing it down is one thing. Do they have to do the reclamation before they can do anything with it? Correct.
That's all part. That's all part of the program. Part of the question is, will it be on the national priority list? Will it get Superfund funding? What level of remediation will be expected of it? And all of that is in negotiations, just up and down between here and Washington. But seems like they're willing to put up the money and make it happen. So we'll see. I will let you know as soon as I know anything. So we talked a little bit about, and I keep talking about these external forces over which we have no control. I brought up Headley as a restriction on our financing. We've talked about the actuarial changes when the legislature with Public Act 202 took the GASB 68 recommendations and applied it to public pensions where it was designed for private. And all these impacts, I took our rep, Darren Camilleri, to lunch at Smokies. At my expense, was no township funds expended, and had a great conversation with him. He's one of the smartest people I've ever dealt with. He's learning fast. And it was a lot of what went back and forth was echoed in my conversations with Stephanie Chang, who will be running for the 1st Senate District. She's currently a House rep. There's no corporate knowledge of Headley from 1978. They don't know why our revenue sharing is so low. Michigan is the only one to actually continually reduce revenue sharing to the municipalities. When more and more municipalities get the requirement to report their pension liability and health care liability status, there are a lot of bells going to be ringing. And a lot of communities don't offer anything. A township with 150 people will have 2 employees, and there'll be no benefits offered. And that's probably the preponderance of the 1,240 townships are very small and really have 2 persons on the payroll. We are on the other end of the spectrum, offering all municipal services, more municipal services than most of the a total of 700 cities, villages, and charter townships. Anyway, I think we're doing pretty well. I'm trying to educate our legislators so they can take that to their committees, their legislation, and get some of these, I'm going to call it bad legislations, bad bills, squared away to recognize those communities that are financially stable and get some of the funding heading in this direction that's been just drying up. I'll let you know how that works out. And last, obviously, what's of immediate importance is the bridge. We were, again, as Mr. Ream said, we were expecting the inspection report end of this month. I queried my contacts in Wayne County, and there's something like 1,300 bridges in Wayne County. 300 and some odd of them belong to the county, and our bridge inspector and our bridge engineer, Mr. Gorman, has found himself swamped. So I'll keep picking at him till we get some results, something I can pass on to you on the status of the bridge. I don't expect nobody had any knowledge of an inspection on the for the middle of April. If that comes to pass, we'll make sure we get the information to you. I don't think it's going to happen, so we'll get it cleared up one way or the other, and should know by this time tomorrow.
We had been told that the March was the last one.
That's what we've been told. So, and I think that's still the case. But when I get some news, you'll have some news. Again, the fly in that ointment is going to be funding, and I'm working my contacts at the county, the state, and I'll be hopefully starting a letter campaign or a way to get some federal dollars too. It's obviously critical to this community, and we're not going to replace it, so let's take care of the stuff we have. And this has been a long day. And you'll notice we've changed, there's no easy way to put this, increased our security level within Township Hall. How much can I say, Chief? We had a series of threatening phone calls. We're going to take the appropriate actions to protect the employees and the residents within this building. Do I think I need an armed guard at the door? Not yet, but we're going to more closely monitor those coming and going. So a little bit of inconvenience. The back doors will stay locked. well, we just have to look after our employees. Maybe it's not a threat. We have to take it very seriously. So I'm sorry if you have to walk a little bit farther, but that's the world we live in. And that concludes my report. With that, public comment on anything. Mr. Pilkington.
Craig Pilkington, South Point, in conjunction with the McLeod on Wednesday, beginning at 7 o'clock, and at St. Philip's Church at 1790 Fort Street in Trenton, there will be a community meeting open to anybody from Groseal that would like to attend. It's discussing what the next steps are and can be relative to McLeod. It's in conjunction with the GICA, the a Trenton community organization, visionaries and stakeholders group, and the Great Lakes Environmental Law Center to discuss not only what may transpire should the sale be affected with Crown, but also if they happen to walk away from the EPA cap and turn it back over to the Wayne County Land Bank, at which point they could fast track it to somebody else at this point. So that is Wednesday, 7 o'clock, 1790 Fort Street, St. Philip's Church. It's on the west side of Fort. On Thursday at 6:30 p.m. at the Groseal High School auditorium, there's going to be a discussion with Joanne Lelikach and I think the administrators for the public schools and our public safety departments, having to do with school safety in light of the Florida shootings and, of course, the threats that have transpired. So anybody from the community that would like to be there, please feel free to come join in, offer your opinion, listen to what some of the thoughts are. Last thing, the State of Michigan Department of Education recently came out with a new indice for an index for ranking schools. And it was published last week on a scale of 0 to 100. And after a few lean years, this new administration at the school board has done a great job. They've brought back the general fund balance. And Groseal High School ranked 99.04 on a scale of 0 to 100, which ranked a number of things, inclusive of test performance and whatnot, and places us up at the very top of high schools, yes, in Wayne County and also the metropolitan Detroit area. So congratulations to the schools. Thank you.
Thank you for that information. Safest community, good schools, no crime, right? Just like we've been saying for decades. Other public comment, Mr. Clark.
Woody Clark, Park Lane. Legal fees.
Legal fees on the warrant list dated 3/28 to 4/10 in the amount of $9,150 for Thomas Assorti, and that was 3 months of attorney.
How much was that again?
$9,150 for 3 months.
This is on for pets with cancer. If you have a pet, it's not feasible for them to sleep next to the smart meter that everybody's got by way of DT jamness. Also, if you have a Wi-Fi, shut it off before you leave the house. It's all about pet cancer.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Other comments? Mr. Heil.
Early on, you were talking again about pensions and actuarial findings and how at the beginning of the year it's one thing and at the end of the year it's another. I just want to comment briefly on that. There are several things that can go on in a year that make things different. The return on investment on your assets, something could go wrong with that. Another is something could happen to the population that you have receiving benefits. Someone might retire early or become disabled, or a merger took place. You can have a change in the mortality table. The Commissioner's Standard Ordinary Mortality Table could be brought in. You can have some kind of a political event. Mr. Trump can declare trade tariffs or something, and that can have some impact on the way things go on, which again would impact your investments. And finally, there could be legislation, something like 202, that comes along and makes a change as well. Those things happen every year. They always have, and they always will. And your challenge is to be able to find a way to deal with that. The majority of employers over the past 30 years have decided that they didn't like that because it was so uncontrollable. The fixed costs were not controllable. And so they bought out. And I think that's the longer we wait on this to try that alternative, the more expensive it comes by tons. But if it keeps going the way this has been set up by you guys, we're going to get our head handed to us on a plate in 5 or 10 years, financially. If you bought it out and consider it, I sincerely believe that it would be money well spent. Interest rates are very low today compared to what they traditionally are. It's never going to get cheaper. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heil. Other comments from the public? All right, with none offered.
So moved. So moved.
My mind reader. Okay.
Second.
Second by Trustee Blanchard. Those in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none offered. We'll call it adjourned at 10 past. I want to thank the board. It's been a long evening. A lot of discussion.